Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Wallet Max Planet Positive podcast. I'm Bhuva Shakti, based in New York, and the founder of Wallet Max. We are a global community of startups, investors, and executives focused on increasing sustainable funding access, especially in climate tech, fintech, deep tech, and AI sectors. We interview one impact investor every month for our podcast. We invite them to share their background, but more importantly, what differentiates them from the crowd? How do they prioritize impact along with profits and planet? We deep dive into their personal and professional journeys and their mission to uplift. Today, we are speaking with Aaron Walker, the founder and managing partner at Ruthless for Good Fund, an early stage fund that invests the most resilient, enterprising, and often overlooked founders who are at the earliest stages of building companies that improve how we learn, work, and live. Aaron believes in the audacity of founders to help build companies that improve lives and create value. In his most recent company, Camelback Ventures, he founded an accelerator that has invested in over 180 founders, leading companies to subsequent funding rounds upwards of $365 million dollars and profitable outcomes. Let me now hand over to Aaron and invite him to say a few words about his background and career path. Over to you, Aaron.
Well, thank you, Bhuva. It's a pleasure to be here and excited to be a part of this conversation on Wallet Max. You explained a little bit of what I've been doing recently. I guess I'll just start by saying that, I started my career as a teacher. I taught high school English in Philadelphia, and uh, that was really like a pivotal moment in my life. I think what I got from that experience was just that learning of every day walking into a classroom, having a plan, and then having to figure out like how you're going to adjust. And that's a lot of what entrepreneurship is like. Is like you have a plan and
Yeah.
you have a vision, uh, and then you have to deal with reality. And so you know, from teaching, I've gone on to do a bunch of other things. I went to law school. I practiced law. I worked in government and philanthropy, and but in the last 12, 15 years, I've been in this impact investing space.
That's a great introduction. Thanks for sharing that, Aaron. And I believe teaching and talking to founders is also very relatable because more of what we do there is execute according to a plan, but also mentoring, being receptive of feedback is very important for founders from investors like yourself. So, what would you say your unique secret sauce is? Is it more like you've transitioned so many careers with so much success? What was the pivotal moment in your life that made you choose impact investing that you've been doing for like about 10, 15 years at the moment?
Yeah. I don't know if there's been like a moment where I I chose impact investing. I think it chose me. I think what I have been clear about for a good portion of my adult life is like the impact that I wanted to have.
Mhm.
And I've tried to be open to different ways of expressing that impact. As my career has gone on, and so I think that's how it's taken me to teaching, and taking me to the law, and taking me to philanthropy, and taking me to government, and taking me to impact investing. And if you had asked me 20 plus years ago when I was graduating college, would I be running a fund 20 years later? I couldn't have imagined it, but what I think I've been open to is just the opportunity to, like, you know, achieve the mission that I want to achieve, but through different avenues.
Yeah, the goal is impact and mission oriented work, whatever pathway leads to it. So, thanks for sharing that. And that's a great way of looking at things. As long as you have a goal and a mission, probably whichever pathway helps us achieve that. Now, why do you typically focus only on overlooked founders at Ruthless for Good Fund? Where do you see opportunities and challenges, especially a very critical sector that's early stage startups, which sometimes may be successful, sometimes may not be? If you could you elaborate that?
No, absolutely. The they're one of our investors and someone who's been a mentor to me for a long time is Mitch and Frida Kapor. And, many years ago, I think it was Mitch who said that genius is equally distributed, but access is not, or some
Yeah.
version of that statement. And I really believe that. Like if you believe that genius is everywhere, then you know in investing, when you sort of see where most investment goes, what you realize is that 98% of investment goes to, at least in the U.S., one portion of our population, white men, right? So that then seems to suggest that like nobody else has good ideas, nobody else is investable, and really your job as an investor is to find opportunity before other people do, right? So I think for us, when we say that, it's not that we see those folks as a charity case. It's not that we think oh, we need to do it for some moral reason. We do it and we believe it because as investors we're trying to find opportunity, and we think that there's a whole set of founders and communities that are ready to build great things. Right? They have an itch that they want to scratch. Um, they have problems that they see based on their lived experience, and that not just they have, but a lot of people have. And so, for us as investors, when we're like like a lot of investors, we're chasing impact, but we're also chasing alpha, and we think we can find it there.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I relate to what you mentioned very much because I focus a lot on women and women of color startups, how I can help them get the opportunity. It's not about do you have the better idea, are you fundable? If you don't even have the access to even showcase what you can offer, then how are you going to even determine am I fundable or not, right? So very relatable because I saw a gap in that sector where women, like you mentioned, we had 2.8% funding, I believe, before pandemic. After pandemic, it has gone down to 1 point X percentage VC funding to women, and that's one of the areas I am focusing as well. So, with so much going on in the current political landscape in US as well as globally with economy and so much disruption in technology and other global wars and things of that happening, there are a lot of big corporations and even private investors. Some of them are shifting priorities. I don't know if it's for the short term or long term, but what do you think, from your perspective, that continuing to invest in value-based startup is still important for the long term? How do you balance profits and return on investment, and especially also, I mentioned earlier, early stage startups, which could take a little bit longer on the ROI?
Yeah, absolutely. I think all companies are expressing some values, right? So, uh, investing in value based startup, I think it's like pro social, uh, pro social values, because the implicitly, folks who are not values based would mean that they're investing without values, and I don't know. I don't know if that's I don't know if that's
Yeah.
true. Although maybe they are. Look, I think um, if we invest and believe, if the conventional wisdom is to invest and believe that people and planet are disposable, then what do we have left? Um, and so I think for me, uh, investing with a values based lens is to say that the point of business is, yes, to make money, but also to like serve the community. And so I certainly don't want to live in a world where we as people and the planet that we live on are disposable, because at some point there will be nothing left. And so I think it's imperative for the long term, because that's how we continue to thrive, let alone survive as a as humanity. And so I don't see any other way to do it. I mean, I certainly don't want to find out the alternative.
Yeah, there is no planet B yet that we have found out that looks like our planet. So, which means we have to make good use of it. And also, like you rightly mentioned, it's not about whether someone has value or not, good or bad. Everyone has some values. But then also, if you are serving some kind of customer through your product or service in a business, if you don't look at people who buy your products, how diverse they are, how are you going to deliver a product and service that can suit their needs? So it's anyway going to be better for business, better for community, your stakeholders, your customers. So in this scenario, how has success been for you? Do you have some case studies or examples of companies you've invested personally from your fund? And additionally, also, I want to hear about a mistake that you have made and how did you navigate? Are there any valuable lessons?
Yeah, mistakes made every day.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, um, in terms of the successes, look, we're investing out of a fund one at Ruthless for Good. Our fund one is $20 million, and so we're 4 years into investing in this fund. So it's still really early days for us. So there are a lot of companies that um, we're excited about, and they're just at the beginning of their journey. I'm happy to talk about a couple of them. One is a company called we just invested in a few months ago called SAI, ESAI. Um, they are a technology company that is using AI to make college advising accessible to everybody. So
Mm,
the woman who started it, her name is Julia Dixon, and Julia was a one of those high priced college counselors. Three, four, five, $600 an hour, serving very wealthy families. Helping their young folks be able to get that college advising that they need to get into their dream school. And what she realized is like everybody should have this.
yeah.
And so she's created a platform using AI that for what she used to charge for 1 hour, now a family can have access to it for the whole year for less than $300
Mm,
to technology based advising and coaching. And so that's a company that we're really excited about. And I think is one of our earliest successes. There's another company called Acclinate. They're based in Birmingham, Alabama, and they're really trying to help pharmaceutical companies and folks who do clinical research get more representation into their clinical trials. So, you know, um, if you think about it, uh, you know, medicine, we all take medicine. We all
yeah.
take certain kind of therapeutics, and oftentimes those therapies don't work for all communities. And part of the reason is that um, we don't have full representation in those trials. And for a very good historical reason, there have been certain communities, particularly the African American community in the U.S., who are very reticent to participate because oftentimes their bodies have been used and abused in the name of science, and so people like don't
Yeah.
want to don't want to participate in that. But at the same time, there's drugs like albuterol, which is the most common drug for asthma, that is basically 50% ineffective in about half the cases that are in which it's used. So a lot of people are taking this drug and it's not doing anything for them. And part of the reason is that when those drugs were being developed, there wasn't full representation in those trials, and so that's another company that I think is one of our earlier successes. We led the seed round; they've raised an A round, and have been basically doubling revenue since we've invested. And so I'd say those two. In terms of uh, uh, lessons learned or mistakes, I think that without naming any company in particular, I think if I had to characterize the mistakes that we've made, I think it comes down to trying to keep bias at bay. Like,
Hmm.
how do we as investors have our own stories about who we are, about how the world works. And I think when I look back at some of the investments where I was like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or maybe that was a mistake. It wasn't anything about the founder or anything like that, but it was me. It was me, say, having a an emotional need to tell myself I'm a certain kind of person, and this investment is really helping me live into a story that I have about myself that maybe clouded me from looking at some of the actual hard facts of what was going on in that business. Um, and so I think that's the common theme. And at our fund, one of the things that we do when we're looking at investments is before we really get too deep into it is we ask the lead investor a set of personal questions about you know what kind of bias do they think that they're coming into the situation with, and then try to work with each other as a team to kind of quiet that, so that those things don't cloud our judgment as we're going through the diligence process. And so I say all that to say that every mistake was never about um, somebody else or about something that was going on in the business. It was always about me.
Yeah, and you kind of learn and improve as you go along. So that's kind of the way not only investing but life works. And one thing resonated with me with the 2 points you shared in the success story. One is AI-based edtech solution. So I really have to ask this question: is AI a hype, or are you trying to eliminate hype out of the investments that you are making? So that's one I wanted to hear. And the second thing is on the healthcare scenario, the startup that you've invested in. I also can relate to it quite a lot, where women were also not participating in a lot of trials, and that they also had challenges. And then women of color, still much more a minority. Are there things that you're doing in these two areas?
Absolutely. I mean, look, AI is everywhere. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think 8 out of 10 companies that we've seen in the last 6 months are AI companies or AI first companies, and so I think part of the challenge is to sort of understand, like, where is AI just marketing, uh,
Mhm.
and then also how is what's the opportunity, there. And I think the things that we're most excited about is not AGI, not like the sort of like you know um, general intelligence that can do everything, but where can AI actually help drive the human experience? And I think Eric Schmidt, who's the former CEO of Google, wrote a New York Times op-ed about this recently, looking at how we think and talk about AI in the U.S. versus how it's being talked about and thought about abroad, and how in non-U.S. countries, the countries that are really focused on using AI to like help farmers have better yields, um,
Yeah.
to do things that improve the human experience, that there's a lot less resistance around AI. There's a lot more sort of embracing of AI, and so I think that's like the our viewpoint around this is. There are folks who think that the holy grail is artificial general intelligence, and I think what we think is that we want AI to be able to drive and improve the human experience.
Yeah, and I've heard stories also in the global south. People don't have access to even uh, get digital computers or devices into their city or village or country in some cases. And then some of this AI and healthcare that you mentioned are kind of helping little bit healthcare to be given to some of those underrepresented communities where AI is playing a really vital role versus us trying to talk about AJ. So I so much relate to it. And to follow up on my second question on women and women of color, are there any other initiatives that are going on in your portfolio?
Yeah, well, look, I will say, in our we've made 21 investments. Um, uh, 13, 14 of the CEOs we've invested in are women. Um, 18, 19 of our founders, CEOs are people of color. So, I think we're living that just through who we're investing in. Um,
Yeah.
and then, there's like some really exciting stuff that we're seeing out there. Actually had a conversation yesterday with an entrepreneur who is building a health tech company that's focused on the um, like women's health around their vulvas, and she's doing some
Yeah.
really amazing work there. And so I think that there's just like a lot of stuff that we're seeing, and we're trying to get into this more and more.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. And that's a really overlooked space, and more we are focusing on people of color, women, and other underrepresented communities. It's going to only better the business because the people you serve are diverse in nature. So, can you share any advice and resources for someone getting into venture capital as an investor, especially if they don't have the traditional path, if they are not part of the insiders club, like how you had a very non-linear path?
Yeah, I think everyone's going to take their own path. I would just offer two things. One like tangible, one maybe just kind of philosophical. One on the philosophical side, I'd say is like develop a perspective, like
Okay.
on something, and put that perspective out there and try to cultivate that perspective on the world. And the reason I say that is, investing is more than just technical, right? Like there's a lot of folks who can
Yeah.
build the model, who can do the spreadsheet, but really what you're trying to do as an investor is you're trying to say I see something that other people don't see, and I can go and find people or entrepreneurs who can live into like this perspective, like who are building solutions into this perspective that I have. And so I would say do that, because you become attractive to funds who are looking for people to come with a set of ideas about where opportunity lies. And so I would say, like, yes, learn how to build a model, yes, learn some of the technical things, but I actually say uh, have a perspective, like on the world and where you think opportunity is, because I think that's what's going to attract a firm to want to bring you on, because they're going to say, oh, that person sees something that other people don't, and we want that on our team. Even when I talk to LPs, I think one of the things that I sense that they're looking for in managers is like a manager who has a perspective on the world about where the opportunity is, because they have a lot of choice. They can invest in a lot of different
Okay.
things. Um,
Yeah.
so I think that's one, and then two is from a technical standpoint. There's a couple great groups out there. One is called Impact Capital Managers, um,
Okay.
where we, Ruthless for Good are members of that group. They do a fellowship for, I don't know if it's just MBAs. It's called the Mosaic Fellowship, and
Okay.
you can get partnered with a VC fund for an internship, and I think that's a great entry point. Um, into VC. Obviously, I think that's more of like a you're in school path, but just to offer one idea.
And is it possible for experienced corporate professionals to transition into venture capital, like investing or even non-investing roles? Because not necessarily everyone has to be a LP or a GP or an investment analyst.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, the reality is that most of the work comes after writing the check.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the part where we're all sort of focused on writing those checks, and that's obviously a key component. But what happens after you write the check? Like, you need folks who understand how to help companies with go to market, how to help companies hire and build great teams and find executives, how to help companies with their engineering and technology stacks, right? So I think that even like marketing and communications, all companies need all those things, and firms need all those things. And so I think if you have those skill sets, firms are looking for those things for themselves, but also for their portfolio companies.
Yeah, you rightly said, because investor founder fit is very critical while you are looking for founders. Founders are also looking for the right investors, because the day you give the check is like day one with them, right? So you need to plan for what's coming ahead instead of just focusing on the transaction of fundraising and the check itself. So, other than impact capital managers, do you have any other communities you rely on where you connect with other investors or investors, but not really active in the
Yeah,
ecosystem, or
yeah,
maybe a little bit passive?
yeah. I mean, one community I'm a part of is called Gratitude Railroad. I think you've chatted with Emma uh,
Yeah, yeah.
lately from Gratitude, but I think that's a great. I mean, they're an investment platform, but they also are an investment community. And so I would offer them up as a place, where people can explore, being a part of a community there. Um, the Aspen Institute has some really great programs for folks who are who are interested in finance and interested in investing. And so I would look there as well. There's also, trying to think, there's also some other groups, that where investors get together. And so, I know like this week is Art Basel. Folks are, there's the Art Basel community, right? So even places where it
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
sound specifically like for investors, um, you know, I think that there are investors who meet in those places. There are, folks who use those platforms as activations and community organizing opportunities.
Yeah, I think if you are able to connect with traditional and non-traditional pathways, communities, then anyone can try to venture into venture capital, investing or non-investing. It's not only for certain type of people or certain backgrounds. I think that's a great message I'm taking away from here. And I just want to quickly also touch upon some of the emerging trends you are excited about. So there's so much happening every day. There is a new trend. What is something that you are focused on, and if there are key elements of your investment thesis that you are trying to tweak based on some of these emerging trends, would you be able to share that with us?
Yeah. I mean, our thesis at Ruthless for Good Fund is that we are seeking to invest in the infrastructure that supports human needs. Uh, you know, and we want to work with entrepreneurs who have a unique insight into the human condition. And we think when we do those two things, right, when we are focused on infrastructure and tools that support humans with people who actually have a unique insight into what people need, um, that when we do those two things, that the outcome is companies that are able to be defensible because humans are flourishing, right? So I think
Yeah,
that's our core thesis at Ruthless for Good Fund. Uh, and I think that for us, that means then we're looking for entrepreneurs who meet those particular criteria. In terms of your question on trends, I mean, we touched on it a little bit earlier, and I know it sounds kind of trite to say in this time, but I think AI is the biggest trend that we're all facing. It's transforming every
yeah,
single industry that we're in. And I think for us, again, where we're most excited and the trend that we're seeing is our opportunities. There's a lot of discussion where we're talking about AI uh, destroying jobs, and destroying opportunity for humans. I think where we're most interested is, and where we're actually seeing a trend in the entrepreneurs that we're finding are those who see AI as an opportunity to advance the human experience, to make sure that a family that can't afford a high priced college advisor can have access to that through technology, so that a young person who might have their parents may have never gone and gotten a bachelor's degree can go to college. We're working with another entrepreneur in the ed tech space where they're building technology to help schools in their back office, because you know a lot of schools are starting to get resource constraint because of cut to public education, and so that's taking adults out of the classroom, um, into these administrative areas. But with technology, we can actually put more adults back into the classroom. We can give adults time to interface with kids more than they have before, and so like we're looking for those opportunities.
yeah. There is a lot of layoffs going on. You might have heard in the news every day. And the headline is, okay, because of AI, we are laying off people or we are not recruiting new people. But when we talk about AI as something that can democratize access and bring more opportunities to people who have not had those opportunities traditionally in the past, then that gives a different view of AI itself. So then people are able to embrace it better. So, with this being said, is there a unique value proposition for your fund as compared to other early stage funds or accelerators or broader angel and VC ecosystems in the US or anywhere else? What would be something that's very uniquely positioned that a founder can come only to your fund? Sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Look at me. I think here's what we bring to the table as a fund, which is, um, I had a previous accelerator, Camelback Ventures. There I've been able to build up, a network of partners that can really work with entrepreneurs, right? So I think our part of our value is like, yes, we can write the check, but B, we have been working with really early stage entrepreneurs for over a decade. And so we've gained some really great insight and skill set into helping a new company understand like what are the nuts and bolts that need to happen in those first 18 months, 24 months to really get a company going, particularly around talent. Like I think
Mhm.
one of our superpowers is helping teams build really great teams because no founder can do it by themselves. And what we've often seen is that where the most time and money is wasted is in like hiring the wrong folks. And so I'd say in particular, we have like a deep expertise in being able to help entrepreneurs get the right folks around them, whether that be full-time team members or mentors and advisors.
Yeah, it's not about the idea, it's about the execution and the right people that you have on your side. That also includes investors, right? So when you work with the early stage startups, there sometimes could be longer commercialization cycles, right? So how do you successfully scale edtech and future of work startups that you're focused on in the social innovation space? Is that a challenge you have faced, or you have a framework that you have been executing successfully for the last 10 years?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think there are some investors who shy away from ed tech and future of work and maybe even like healthcare startups because of the long sales cycles.
Yeah,
And I think we go into it understanding that those sales cycles are going to be long. I think for us, what we've learned is how do you understand and how do you build a business where the contract size is big enough to justify those kind of sales cycles. So where we've seen companies struggle is you have a 9 month sales cycle for a $5,000 contract, right? And in the
mm,
meantime,
yeah,
unless you've raised tons of money, in the meantime you're burning through cash, you're having issues with cash flow. Uh, but what we've seen the most successful companies do is figure out the right ICP
mhm,
that is far enough up the value chain where the contract sizes are 50K,
yeah,
100K,
mhm,
200K, um, and then having a 6 month sales cycle. It's a pain, but it starts to make business sense. Like you can actually do it, and so part of what we try to do is really help our entrepreneurs and work with them to try to understand, uh, you know, where can we build this business model uh, where it can make sense. If we're going to have to wait 6 months, uh, we can do that because the contract sizes are justifiable.
yeah, yeah. No, rightly said. And that's from an investor perspective, because we are able to wait for 6 more months for a 50K or a 100K contract. The founders are, in the meantime, very nervous, anxious. They want to show revenue, they want to meet milestones, they want to keep going. So, how do you balance that with your founders?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think what we try to do is just try to give them examples of how it's worked for other companies so they can see
Mhm.
uh, what's normal and what's not. But also, we try not to disavow them of that sense of urgency. Right? Like
Yeah,
we want them to have some of that drive, but also to really say like in those moments, how can we refine what our customer success and our engagement strategy looks like, so that maybe we can take that 6 month cycle and turn it into a 4-month cycle, right? Are there some cheat codes that we can use to speed things up, but also other financing options that we can access. There are a lot of not a lot, but there are some places where you can get financing based on like contracts that you have, right? So maybe
yeah. Mhm.
you sign a contract, you're not going to get paid for it on 6 months. You can go to a bank, you can go to there are institutions like mission driven finance where you can go and you can get a loan based on those contracts so that you can smooth over some of that cash flow while you wait to get paid on those contracts.
Yeah, that's a great advice because that kind of balances or bridges the gap where investors have the need to get better clients, but also the founders have the urgency to prove to the investors that they are delivering. So that's a great message where I want to move on to asking you about how can people get in touch with you and your fund? How can founders find you? And what would they have to have in place before they can have a conversation or a meeting with you?
Absolutely. Well, our website is ruthlessforgood.com. So you can find us there. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Aaron Walker. You can also email me. It's just my first name at ruthlessforgood.com. So folks can find me there. And then in terms of what we need, look, we do pre-seed and seed investing. I would say at pre-seed stage, we're looking for companies that have some level of an MVP that they are piloting. You don't need to have 100 pilots going, but a couple, right? Like, is
Hmm.
there something,
Yeah,
even if it's stuck together with tape and glue, that you put it in front of people and they're using it, and you're getting some feedback. Um, and then with our seed stage companies, we're looking for a product that has some level of validation through pilots, where you're trying to start to position yourself for scale. You're not there at the scale point yet, but you're past the demonstration point. Um, if you have a deck, that's great. It could be slides. It could be a two pager. We don't have any like hard rules on the documents that people need to have.
and for pre-seed, if they have pilots in place, do they need to have customer and revenue traction, or customer traction is okay with LOIs or letter of intents or contracts in place? What is the criteria there?
Yeah, I mean, look, paid pilots are always better because one of the things that, you know, and my suggestion would be that all entrepreneurs get paid for their pilots, even if you're not getting paid what
Yeah.
you think the price actually is. I think part of what you're trying to validate is someone willing to take money out of their pocket and
Hmm.
put it into my pocket. And so,
Yeah.
you know, to the degree that you can do that, I think that's a stronger pilot because yes, you're validating the product, but you're also validating the value proposition, right? And I
Yeah.
think the way that you validate the value proposition is that people are willing to actually pay something for it.
And that can also provide a baseline for your pricing model or the willingness to pay where you can go less or more. And in terms of seed stage, there is a lot of definition. Let's say in US it's different, Europe it's different. Even in US, when you talk to different types of investors, some consider seed different from Series A. What is your definition of seed?
Yes, I mean, I think our definition of seed is again that you have a product at the seed stage that has been validated through pilots,
Mhm.
um, where there's revenue. Right? Like I'd say at the seed stage, you don't need to have $1 million in revenue, but 100,000, 200,000, $300,000 in revenue. Um,
Mhm. Yeah.
Handful of customers um, to be able to show again people are willing to pay for this, and that you were beginning to position the company for scale.
Yeah, very rightly said. So sometimes there is a definition of seed in terms of revenue you generate. Sometimes people get caught in the amount of money they have to raise. They say they are raising Series A funding, but they might not have enough revenue traction. So it's good to position that pre-seed and seed. You need to have some pilots, even paid pilots, couple of them, even less than the pricing that you are aiming for. But in seed, if you have about 200, 300, or um, at least less than $1 million revenue with some paid customers for product, that will be a great definition
Yeah,
for
and I, and I,
pre-seed.
and I would just say, just sorry to interrupt, but I would just add that uh, that's just us, right? Other firms have different definitions, and two,
Yeah.
there's there is no hard and fast rule because it depends on the industry that you're in. So, for instance, we've
Hmm.
invested in some fintech companies. Fintech is highly regulatory, right? It takes a while
Yeah.
to build a customer base in the fintech. It takes a while to start to generate revenue, particularly if you're doing something consumer facing, because it's so highly regulated. And so there have been instances where we have made a seed investment in a fintech company that didn't have any revenue, right? But because
Mm.
we understood the nature of fintech, um, we weren't necessarily expecting revenue at the seed stage for a fintech. But say in ed tech, we at the seed stage we do expect revenue.
Yeah, rightly said. And also health tech, it could take longer. And like we earlier mentioned, if there is a contract that's coming up that's high value, then probably revenue may not matter at the moment. So thanks for sharing that, Aaron. And I think we are kind of close to time. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience before we wrap up? We have investors, executives, and startup founders in our community.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing I would add is, you know, in working with entrepreneurs, the the thing that we talk a lot about with them is how do you hold on to the big vision, but
Hmm.
figure out what's the first little bit that you can achieve. And I think sometimes it can be hard. It can be hard to see the whole pie, to know what the whole vision is, um, and not want to go for it all at once. And
Exactly.
I think just going for a piece of it doesn't mean you're giving up the rest of the vision. It's just the first step. And so I'd say whether you're an investor, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're an executive, like whatever your big vision is, hold on to it, uh, and then just figure out what the first step is, and then the first step will take you to the second step.
Yeah, always small steps, first step, then iterate, improve as you go along. Don't try to, have that big vision to be executed in full to move forward. So that's a very great message to end our conversation with. Thanks so much for taking time, Aaron. Great talking to you, and I'll share everything we've shared with our community as well.
Bhuva, it was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.